I'm George Boston Rhymes, and again, this is the Ghetto Free Press. Somewhere in the state of Georgia and somewhere in the United States, the truth must be told. And that's what I intend to do, because I served my nation for 21 years. And I want to say that if you hide the truth from Georgians or the American people or the world for that matter, then generations to come will have a distorted view of what you went through. If you travel in Brooks County, just a few miles southwest of Quitman, you will see a sign of a branch called Pride Branch. I put a pin in that. Now, if history is not reported, or news is not reported to the general public, when people look at the Quitman 10+2 and the history surrounding these two mistrials of one of the Quitman 10+2, you could get a distorted view. So you must have the truth. You must know that originally it was the Quitman 10. Then they went back and got two others, known as the Quitman 10+2. Now you have heard about that, and it's been 3 years and 5 months, and still they have not had their day in quote codes. Let me repeat. After 3 years and 5 months, they still have not had their day in court to resolve their problems. Now, the first two court cases on Lula Smart that ended up in a mistrial. Now, you don't know nothing about the beef of what took place, because this South Georgia controlled news media outlet ignored very important information that came out in both of these mistrials. You don't know that John Boone worked for the Quitman Post Office and that he took official mail, took information off, and handed it over to a private investigator that had been hired by Brooks County School Board attorney to investigate the Quitman 10+2. Now, as Attorney King said, if I got it right, and I think I do, that should have been something like red flags going up. Haven't finished yet. Since that have been brought out in two court cases, both of them ended up in a mistrial. Why haven't you read about that in your newspaper? Why have not the Postmaster General of the state of Georgia and of the United States of America done something about that possible violation of everyday common citizens' right to have their postal mail protected? Haven't finished yet. The registrar that works at the Board of Elections, yes, she had a spike in absentee ballots, but does that mean that she have a right to take ballots from the voting location or her office to her private residence, where she can have Republicans, Democrats, Independents, or Green parties look over those ballots if she so choose, because they are not in the jurisdiction of the government entity? That's just food for thought. I'm not saying she did that, but the court said under oath that she did it, and that she hired extra people, including her granddaughter, to process the ballots. The attorney, G.B.R. King, asked a valid question. Of course, you wouldn't know nothing about this because, see, South Georgia don't have a news media network that will report cases such as this. But if someone commit a crime or break into a convenience store, then you got it. You're right. Front page coverage. More so if it's a black African American. And some people will say you playing a race card. There is no race card to play. When you're dealing in truth and falsehood, we're not even to that level yet. Haven't finished yet. Now, what have the Georgia Secretary of State done to show other registrars in the state of Georgia that it is right or wrong to take ballots from your place of employment to your place of personal living without any repercussions from any elected official or government entity in the state of Georgia or in the Department of Justice, because Eric Holder of the Justice Department have been given DVDs from the Representative Tyrone Brooks, and he has not reported back to the people who raised these questions in the first place. Now, so with all this in play, why did not the newspaper report what you will find on Boston G.B.R. channel? That the judge would not even let us record anywhere around the courthouse grounds here in Brooks County. That means you couldn't interview the people on the courthouse ground because they banned us from recording. Now what do you think about that? Are we in Russia, China, or some other third world communist nation? Wait a minute. Gonna get good in a minute. Do you not know that most of the Quitman 10+2 are highly respected here in Brooks County? Elizabeth Diane Thomas have always worked with children, dedicated to the education of all children, regardless of race, color, creed, or nationality. But yet in the press and in the news media, they paint these people as criminal, ugly mug shots. Thank God for the Honorable Shaveen King, Carla Walker, and Simmons Law Firm out of Atlanta for standing up for the best under our form of government. Now look, many people in the black community, more so among our young black people, they come up to the courthouse, they look for blacks to be employed in and around the courthouse in some of these high-level jobs, not just in janitorial service or cutting the grass. After all these years, it seems as if though something remains seriously wrong here in the state of Georgia. Now look, if nobody talk about it, then you would never know about it. And since the newspapers will not even hire blacks in the higher echelons of the newspaper, and if they hire them, they have no say-so, according to people that works for TV stations and newspapers. They tell me this. And I got others in the radio system, network, who has a story to tell. But they must maintain some level of income. And so they can't tell the whole truth, but they'll tell me some of the truth off the record. And I will never divulge their names, because I understand that system. After all, I put 21 years in the United States Armed Forces, and that's another story for another day. So as I close, I'm appealing unto the governor of the state of Georgia once again, to the Georgia Attorney General Sam Olsen, and to Secretary of State Brian P. Kemp. Brian P. Kemp ignored a public meeting at the Board of Elections that was definitely in violation of the Sunshine Law, violation of the Open Records Law, or Open Meetings Law, and yet nothing has been done publicly, and nothing was published even about that meeting not being announced. to the general public. This all have been documented. I'm not reinventing the wheel. This is nothing new. This is a matter of fact. And if anybody would like to review the fact that I'm talking about, they are already available. Just Google Quitman 10 plus 2 on YouTube. Let me repeat, I want you to get it right. Quitman 10 plus 2 on YouTube. And to get the first base of all of what took place before the Quitman 10 went through all this court stuff, go to kvci.blogspot.com. Let me repeat. Go to my blog, kvci.blogspot.com. I walked the streets of Quitman and Brooks County in Marvin, along with the late Reverend Calvin Benjamin. We had people to tell us how the G.B.R. intimidated them to the degree to right over here, I can take you to their house, by my cousin's house, right across the street. This lady said she would never, ever vote again because of the degree that the G.B.R. investigated them. Now I'm asking anybody, Secretary of State, Brian P. Kemp, I will accompany you to her house. She was afraid to even talk to us. And there are others. And some of them are have already been given to Eric Holder of the Justice Department. So we now are showing the world what a real democracy look like. Next, I'm going to pinpoint, short form, the black mayors in Georgia, what they are going through while our governor, Attorney General Olsen, and the Secretary of State and others, including the civil rights organizations, are ignoring. Are they waiting for another black mayor to get shot down in the streets of Georgia like the mayor in Dawson, Georgia, shot 6 times? His mother was pistol whipped, and yet we don't hear no large outcry? Listen, how long, Mr. Justice Department, do you believe and think that the American people can keep sending their sons and daughters to fight for foreign nations of the world, and you don't come fight for the people who are crying out for justice here in Georgia and in the United States of America? Now, in closing, I took an oath and obligation to defend this country from both foreign and domestic enemies, and anybody that comes up against the American people and infringe upon our right to vote, then they are indeed an enemy to this country. And the only thing we can fight truth with, in following the lines of Dr. Martin Luther King, is truth, open government, exposure, and the history of this South Georgia county. Now, I didn't forget Pride Branch. I told you about Pride Branch, just a few miles away from here. When you go look at that branch, you will see the sign say Pride Branch. But if you do not have the history, you will never know what that Pride Branch meant. You'll get the dictionary and you'll tell your children to do a term paper or research paper on pride and the branch. But unless they go back to understand that before that branch became Pride Branch, that branch in the state of Georgia was called Nigger Branch. And my grandmother told me as a child, they would hang and lynch blacks in front of this courthouse. And they would put them on the back of a wagon, take them to Nigger Branch, and throw them over. And if the black people wanted to get them, they had to get them out, if they could get them out at all. I heard this, my siblings heard this from a child. It's well known here, and we are only carrying on the history that the news media may not want you to know. And by the way, Google the May return of lynchings and the Week of Terror in May of 1918. Perhaps Professor Mark George from Valdosta State University could tell you more about it on his website. Just Google the May Returner Project and get the rest of the story. But just remember, I do this because I believe in the Jesus some people dip in. You duplicate Jesus, you imitate Jesus, and you placate Jesus. But St. John 8:38 says, and ye shall know the truth, and that the truth shall set and make you free. That's St. John 2:38. 2:38. Peace.